Okay, hello all. Welcome to our Xero payroll employee session on how to. There's basically going to be three points to this session. The first one's going to be setting up a new employee. The next step, which is probably the main step that everyone would be using, is processing a pay run, and the last step is ensuring that all your employee entitlements are up to date and correct, and also processing when an employee takes an annual leave day, sick day, and also making sure that it's all correct and up to date. Okay. So the first step we're going to be doing today is setting up a new employee. This is an important step to make sure that when we do pay runs, that the tax, superannuation, all that sort of stuff is calculated correctly, and hopefully there's minimal need for change when we're processing those payrolls. So to do that, we need to enter into the employee screen. So this is the dashboard. Today we're using the demo company, obviously, which everyone has access to. So this is basically what you'll see when you log into Xero, and this will have your company name and all your bank accounts and that sort of detail. So to kick on, so to look at your employees, you click on the Payroll tab, Employees tab, and here we can see that there are six, I think, six employees here. We can see that there's a couple fortnightly calendars, weekly calendars. So there's two different pay cycles that this entity does, and it looks like this employee most likely hasn't been set up correctly. So this is the whole point of doing this. So to add a new employee, from this screen we click Add Employee. And this is the first screen you'll see. So this is the basic general details you put in. So from here we'll put in a male, so Mr. First name be Steve, middle name, he's got no middle name, and last name Smith. Email is optional, you can put that in. We use this if we use the employee portal, which is another step which unfortunately we're not covering today, but if you're interested in this, speak to your accountant or contact myself in relation to this. So the next field, we put in the date of birth. So we'll just put in a random date of birth here. It's obviously male. We put in the address, so I'll just make up address. So just some of these details come up automatically. Phone you can put in, that's not too important. So for the purposes of this session, I'm going to skip this. So from here we press save. And the next, we need to work along these tabs. So the next step was to click on employment. So we put in the start date. So this person can start today. We put in the classification, so this basically can be anything you like. It's not too important. The next step is the payroll calendar. So this entity obviously has two payroll calendars, which I spoke about earlier. For this example, I'm just going to choose weekly. Earnings rate, it's generally ordinary hours. This is also something that's generally set up when the file is set up. So we generally choose ordinary hours there. We don't want this employee to authorise leave, and we don't want this employee to authorise timesheets. Timesheets is also a different module of the payroll, which is a bit more advanced than your general overview payroll. So save those details, and from here the tax declaration. So this is really important when we fill this out. It ensures that the tax is all calculated correctly, especially if they're not claiming the tax-3 threshold, or they've got a HEX or HALP debt, and all these other different items. So from here we just put in a mock TFN, and this is generally you copy the form that the employer has filled out. So when the employee starts, you obviously give them a tax file declaration, they fill out the form, and you input these details. So from here we can do that. We've checked all these boxes. It matches with the tax file number declaration. So if we press save from here, save only. Now from here we can actually lodge this directly to the ATO. So you don't need to send the actual form in. obviously it's not here because we're using the demo file, but you can press File now, and it will send the form directly to the tax office, and no need to post the actual form. From here, this is the leave application, so I'm going to touch on this a bit later in this webinar. So we won't need to do anything for now for setting up the employees. Now with the bank accounts, so generally we like our clients to use it's called an ABA file, which once you process the pay run, allows you to extract an ABA file, which you upload directly onto your internet banking. Which in turn you don't need to process the actual pay run manually. You can just upload the one ABA file, and if you've got 20 employees, it does all 20 payments at once, and you don't need to put the payments in separately. So you don't need to actually run off 20 separate payments. If you're interested in organising this, please contact your accountant or me directly. So from here, we'll put in the statement text. So this is what's going to appear on the employee's bank statement. So with this example, we can do demo company wages. Oops. The account name, so this is the account name of the employee that they give you, Steve Smith. BSB, we'll just do an example. BSB account number, which is fairly straightforward. Okay, oops. Now this is an also important thing which I've got myself stuck on. Make sure that we save this before. So stay on page, save this before we go any further. So pay template. Now this is another important part. So from here, this will allow us to put in the stock standard pay run. So it allows us to put the earnings rate, any super, add leave lines, and that sort of stuff. So from here, we can do add earnings line. Now I always like to enter rate. Earnings rate will be ordinary hours, and rate because it generally Xero calculates the wage a bit more accurately with enter rate. There's a bit of rounding with annual salary, so I generally do the actual rate, which we can work out quite easily. So Steve Smith, he works 30 hours a week, and his rate is 25 an hour. Add deductions line. This is relevant if we got any adjustments, so union fees, post-tax, that sort of stuff. In this case, this employee won't have that. From here, add super. So this employee has a statutory rate of 9.25. This is obviously going up to 9.5 next financial year. And these accounts, so make sure this expense account is allocated to the superannuation expense, and the liability account is obviously your superannuation liability account. So we can click OK on that. Right. So the next stage is to obviously add the leave lines. So this is important when calculating the annual leave. So I basically, the best option here is to choose calculate rate based on ordinary earnings. So hours of leave accrued by full-time employee. So it's generally 4 weeks. So in this case, it's going to be 152 hours, and he works 38 hours a week. So press OK. The same goes with sick leave, which is called personal carers leave. So we do the same with this. In this case, it is 2 weeks of leave per year, and there's obviously 38 hours in 1 week. So we press save there. And the opening balances, we don't worry about this too much. This is generally when we're setting up the file. So it's normally something your accountant or whoever's setting up the file will do for you, but it's not actually too important in inputting a new employee. So that's basically how to set up an employee in a nutshell. I can't stress the importance enough of ensuring that the tax file number declaration is correctly. Otherwise, this will affect your tax. And making sure that this mirrors what the employee gives to us on their tax file number declaration. Okay, so that's basically stage one of this webinar. The next stage is processing a pay run. So this is when we process the either weekly, fortnightly pay run. So to do this, click on Payroll and Pay Runs. Okay, so you can see here these are the previous pay runs that we have completed. If I want to do a new pay run, so I'm going to add a pay run, select pay period. This is obviously some of the employees on this file are on the fortnightly calendar and some are on the weekly calendar. So for this example, I'm going to choose, I want to process the employees on this calendar. Now if you're a bit confused with calendars, these are set up when we set up the file. So obviously if your accountant's setting up the file for you, this is something that we'd look to set up before you actually get your hands into the file. Okay, so this is basically, so I've generated the pay run. You can see there's 3 employees on this pay run. Steve Smith, so that's the gentleman we just set up, and we've got Garrison and we've got Green. So you can see Green's coming up as 0, which is probably because the employee hasn't been set up properly. So, or there might be a casual employee or along those lines. So from here, if we want to update this, it's easy. You just do, he's done 20 hours this week. It'll calculate the tax, super, and everything else for you. So save that. The best option is to here. Once you ensure that these are all correct, is to basically process the pay run. So post the pay run. Yes, I'm sure I want to post this pay run. So there's a few options we need to do from here. The first one is if we actually physically give the pay slips to the employees, you can view reports and view the pay slips, which come up in a separate window. And there we go. So you can print these off, hand them to your employees. Obviously these settings can be changed. We can put your company logo there, and we can amend these as much as we like. We can amend this to show the sick leave if we like. There's all sorts of amendment options to these. You can also email payslips. So if you've got an email address in for each employee, rather than printing it out, printing it off and handing it to each employer, which can be a time-consuming task, you can just email payslips. And you can see here, Steve we didn't put an email in for. So if we press email payslips, these individual payslips will go to these employees. So email, so they've been emailed, which is that's probably the option to do if it saves a lot of time, a lot of costs as well. So the next option is, as I discussed earlier, download ABA file. So this is where we download the ABA file and then upload it to our internet banking. So this will basically allow you to download it. Now, the easiest way I find to do this is to click on Payroll Options, right-click on Download ABA, and Save Link As. The reason for this is that we can now save this wherever we like. So you can put it in a file that you've got on your desktop or on your C drive or even on your server that you're using, just anywhere you like basically. We only need it once, so once you upload it onto internet banking, you can most likely delete this file and we won't have to see it again. So that's that. Now the last important step with processing payroll is that in order to get the details across to the actual system, so on Xero, payroll and the actual Xero sort of two separate systems. So in order for the general accounts system to see the payroll, we have to create a draft bill. So this is very important, this step. Are you sure you want to create a draft bill for this pay run? We click yes. Now from here we go to accounts, purchases. You can see in this demo file there's 2 draft invoices. So if you see what these are, this is obviously one that's just a general expense invoice, and this is the invoice that we just created. So you should go into this and check the details. So yep, that earnings is going to the wages account, which is correct. The tax is going to pay-as-you-go withholding payable, and the super is going to the super expense, and the super payable is going to the superannuation payable liability account, which is all correct. So we can now approve this invoice, and from here, so this invoice will now appear on your payables. But generally, when you pay, it's gonna show up in the bank account the next day. So from dashboard, so this is entering the bank reconciliation territory. And I'll just use an example. If this $15 was if you're doing individual payments, you'd have to actually allocate this to the pay run. Otherwise, if you're using an ABA file, it will come up as one lump sum payment, and you can just match that payment to the invoice. This is obviously a step that Rob Vosti did in our last session, which was generally bank reconciliation and the general overview of Xero. The last thing to note about pay runs is if we were to go into the pay run that we just completed, and say for example we made a mistake and we want to update this. This is obviously before you do the payment. So if once you've paid it and you realise you made a mistake, well, this is where I think you need to speak to your accountant to ensure that the mistake is fixed correctly. But if we've realised we've made a mistake before the actual payment is made, you can revert this back to draft. Yes, I'm sure. And say, Tracy, she only worked 15 hours. I made a blue, made an error. Save that. Close. Now we want to post this again, but the important thing to note when we do with this is the invoice we just created is going to be different to this pay run. So to ensure that the pay run is going to match the accounts, we need to reverse that invoice we just created and do a new one. So this can be a bit of a complicated task, and I'd recommend you contacting your accountant to help you take you through this step if you've actually made a mistake, especially if you're new to Xero, because it can be quite tricky. So that's generally how to process a pay run in a nutshell. The next step that we're going to go through is employee entitlements and making sure that these are all correct and display what they should be. So if you use this for an example, we'll go into a debts pay run. You can see it's accruing the annual leave, but if she was to take an annual leave day, we need to ensure that this is actually processed in the system. Now, there are two ways of doing this. The first way is if your employees don't have access to the employee portal, then obviously the administrator, whoever it is, needs to process these leave applications separately. So if we go to payroll employees, and we'll click on Odette. So say for example Odette's taken 1 day annual leave and 1 day sick leave. Well, first we need to process the annual leave day. So from here we click into the leave tab, and we can see here from her balances that Odette has 28.4 hours of annual leave and 6 hours of personal/carers leave. You can see here too, looks like they've already processed an annual leave day which was rejected. So to process a leave application, click on Add Leave Application. Leave type, we want it to be annual leave. Title, generally you just put a title in that you're going to understand in the future. So we might just say if she's going to on a holiday, just write holiday. And description, you can write a further description in that field if you like. Start date, do it the 25th. She's only taking 1 day. That's that. Now I'm not sure why this is coming up with, that looks like it's 2 days, but she's only taking 1. So make sure that the days that you allocate, this is actually correct. So 7.6, so that's 1 day. So that's scheduled. And the next, so for example, if she called in on the 26th for a sick leave day, we need to process that as well. So personal carers leave, title, employee called in. Obviously, you can put any title you like, as long as it's going to be familiar to yourself when you're doing the file. That's come up with that as well. Then that might be some settings in a template. I'm not too sure about that, but just ensure when you're doing these that the hours actually match to what hours she works per day. And also another thing to note is if she took a half day, well then obviously you could just put half of 7.6 hours down, or how many hours she took. If she took 4 hours, we can put 4 hours annual leave. Okay, so from here, you can see this has updated her leave balances. So now she's only got 20.8 hours annual leave, and she's actually gone into negative for a sick leave. So if you allow this, that's fine. If you don't, well, you can process this as unpaid leave or along those lines. So now I'm going to show you how that actually comes up in a pay run. So this is obviously the week ending the 25th and the 26th. So if we go to pay runs, add pay run. So we're doing the week ending the 28th of June. Now if we go to Odette's pay run, you can see it comes up automatically. So it looks like I've processed these correctly. It's coming off her balance. It's coming up on her pay slip. And annual leave, even this is just the annual leave accrued per pay run, so that's fine. She still accrues annual leave on these days even though she hasn't worked. So we can press save. And just another thing to note, looks like this hasn't been set up correctly in a demo file either, because it's not adding any sick carers leave for her. So if we save that and close, now we want to view the payslip. So this is what the employee will see. Now Odette Garrison, great. So ordinary hours, there was a day she worked. That was a day she took off for annual leave. And this is the sick leave / personal carers leave. You can see here her leave types. So annual leave hours accrued, she's used 7.6. So now the balance is 22.14, which is a little bit higher than when we saw it when we were processing the annual leave applications, and this is because she's actually accrued a little bit of annual leave this pay run. Okay, so that's basically it for employee entitlements. What I'm going to show you next is how to view, if you want to process superannuation for the last month or the last quarter. So if you know all your pay runs are correct, the reports that you can print out to view these. So we go to reports, all reports. If we go down, so these are the reports that you can see. Obviously we're only interested in payroll reports here. So if we want to see what the super payable for example, May is, payroll employee summary. Date range, in this case, because we know it's last month, we can choose last month. Otherwise, you can select the date range. So if we click on last month, update. And generally, I like to export this to PDF. It's easier to view. You can see it actually shows you the date. Now, this is the superannuation owing for May. and it also may include some deductions. So if these are post or pre-tax super contributions, best to double check these and ensure that you're paying these for the employees as well, especially if they're salary sacrificing. So we can see here that we owe 957.16 of super for May, and the amounts for each employee are listed here. And obviously we can print this for any period we like. Okay, guys, that was all we had for today. If you've got any questions about payroll or any general Xero questions, feel free to contact your accountant or myself. My email address is tsherlock@thepractice.com.au. I hope you got something out of this session. And of course, again, if you've got any questions, just call your accountant or contact myself. Thank you.